This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. My name is Angelica Slinska. I'm your host, and today we are talking about the Education Durham, the Early Years Curriculum project. So this is the third episode of the project, and I'll just quickly give an overview. So this is a Durham Local Authority Early Years project with Hemsel's Early Years, working with 26 schools, focusing on strengthening purposeful curriculum design and implementation in the early years, as well as empowering leaders and educators in creating meaningful contexts for progressive teaching and learning. So the 26 schools have been working with Anne Brass, Specialist Advisor for Early Years, and Jan Dubiel, who leads the work at Hemsel's Early Years, part of Quorum Hemsel's. And we've previously had on the podcast early years leaders Paige Hutchinson and Charlotte Norman, who discussed theirs and their team's early years curriculum journeys. And today we have Jill Jones with us, head teacher at Rosemary Lane Nursery School, and Rebecca Martin, deputy head teacher at Rosemary Lane Nursery School also. So thank you very much both for joining on the podcast today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So I think it would be really good if you tell us a little bit about the context of your nursery school, as this is really important in terms of constructing a curriculum for early years children.
Yeah, we're quite a large nursery school in the east of Durham County. We sit along the coast, and we are in an area where there are pockets of deprivation from ex-mining communities. But we also have quite a lot of affluent children who also attend nursery, who come from farms and the local community as well.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a mixed catchment. And we've got around about 100 to 120 children on roll. And then we have a big team of staff. So there's about 26 staff in nursery who support all of the children. That includes the early years educators and then support staff who look after children with additional needs. And we've got quite a lot of children who attend. About 25% of our children have got some kind of additional need that we support them with. And then on top of that, we have children who've also got speech and language difficulties as well who attend.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so all of that is really important to keep in mind when constructing a curriculum. Obviously, every single setting is different, and each unique school is different. And it's also really important to understand each cohort every single year. And I know that this is something, Jill, that I heard you talk about at the Durham Celebration Day. So you discussed the fact that your team were quite confident in constructing the curriculum, but then you felt like you really had to revisit all of this at the start of the new academic year. And you did quite a lot of work around this. So would you like to tell me a little bit about this?
Yeah. We feel like every year we need to reconstruct our curriculum. Mm-hmm. And we've just said actually termly, even because we have a rolling intake of children, and that the children are all very different and they bring with them different skills and different attributes. And we need to adapt how we work to be able to support that.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of different factors that we feel really impact upon our practice, right from the relationships that we have with parents to how often children attend to their on-entry development levels as well. So there's lots of different factors that are specific to each cohort that we have to consider when we develop our curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what I was going to say also is the fact that there are always changing times in terms of there's kind of obviously post-COVID, there have been a lot of changes. And again, that's something that I picked up that you discussed in your presentation previously, and the fact that we're looking at a more kind of digitalized age, changing family structures and things like that. So it's really interesting that you say termly, you really kind of revisit the curriculum, because I've not really heard of that many settings that do that, and they almost kind of see the curriculum as something that they've constructed and now that's done, and they can kind of pick that up off the shelf and then implement it every year with a group of children, maybe slightly make some tweaks here and there. But is your curriculum very much kind of do you change it a lot? Is it very fluid? Do you kind of really go for it?
It is quite responsive. I think probably we have a bit of a framework that we know would work for our children.
Our core values always remain at the centre, don't they?
They do, but then we feel like we need to adapt that and to be able to make sure that we are targeting the things that the children who are here at the moment need most. So we do have things that we'll do regularly all of the time, and that will develop over the children's time at school. But then they might need to be tweaked. So the level of where the children come in at might depend on where we need to pitch things at. Or we might decide that there are certain things happening within our cohorts. So we had quite a lot of children who've migrated into the area from Nigeria. And we feel like that's something that really has made an impact on what we're providing. And we've really had to go through the provision on offer and what we were teaching the children to make sure that we were including all of our children and making sure they were visible and that resources were meeting the needs of all of the children that we have. And that's just like a small example that it happens often. We might have an intake where we have a high percentage of children who come in with quite significant additional needs that then we need to adapt, specifically the provision. And we're constantly refining the things that we're offering for our children and making sure that that's accessible outside and inside for them to be able to use those things independently. But then also thinking about the children who've been here and who are already maybe 5-term children in nursery, making sure that there are things that are stretching those children as well as the new intake. And it is a bit of a battle to constantly have it right. And that's why we're constantly refining it, because you don't know what the children are like until you receive them and until you spend some time with them and they've settled in. And that's where we can only plan for what we know. And then we have to change as we go along, depending on what we find out as we get there.
And that's where it really seems to make sense to really take a look at the curriculum every single term, because then, like you say, you need to get to know the children first, and then the children, as they are with you in the school, in the setting, they change as well. Their needs constantly change as they develop and progress and really kind of find their feet in the setting. Is this something that your team, how do they respond to it in terms of, I guess, workload? Probably because if we're thinking about, all of the curriculum and kind of taking a look at each part and thinking, okay, what are we changing now? How do we respond to children? I know that a lot of that is part of that kind of observation cycle anyway. It must be. How do your team respond to that? And, is there a lot of training involved as well?
I think there's a lot of reaction to what's happening in the nursery and how the children are responding to the practitioners. And often they'll become frustrated that something that they think maybe we've planned in advance isn't really working the way it needs to. So they'll have to adapt it. And I think that's the skill with early years practitioners, that they do on the ground, they adapt as they go along. And as the conversation changes, they change along with that. And they know the practitioners are all very skilled. They've had a lot of CPD to help them with observations, and they know about giving children time and standing back and watching and going with how the children are finding things, rather than predetermining what we want and leading it for them. And I think that's where the practitioners themselves, they want to adapt, and they don't see it as a workload. They just see it as their job, that they're responding to the children. So it's not like we have a set curriculum and that's what we're always going to do, and we'll give you the curriculum today and you can deliver it tomorrow. It's not really like that. We sit down and we decide about what we feel we want the children to achieve by the end of the time they've been in the nursery. And then we backtrack and see, what is it we need to do to be able to get them to that end goal? And how do we deliver that? And each year the children are different, and they might need it delivered in a different way. They might need different resources to practice it in a different way. They might need the staff to teach it in a different way. And that's the bit that we are constantly refining and changing and developing.
I think over the last few years, the staff have become really confident at planning in the moment, and they're really confident with that planning and assessment cycle. And that's really obvious in the nursery. If you come in, you can see that there's something going on over there that might not work over there. And exactly what those children need at the time.
And this reminds me of what you were saying as well, Rebecca, around like your core values. That's kind of what you said doesn't change. So I guess in terms of thinking about what do you want these children to achieve at the end of the year, I guess that might be quite similar for most cohorts generally, but then as you get to know the children, of course, there's probably different kind of specific things that you want each child to then achieve also.
Definitely, yes. And I think that that's the skill of the staff, that they understand what the end goals are, and then they can pick up and we can talk together about what training they might need or what else we can offer the children so that we can support them in making sure all of the children make the progress in all of the areas of the curriculum.
I think the way that we work as well, every single member of staff who's working with the children knows every child very, very well. Even though we've got really large numbers, we've got the opportunity to sit down as a team every week and talk about the children, and we've got that special time set aside so that you're going in knowing exactly what that child needs, and sharing that as a team.
Yeah, and although they have a key person, we make sure that all of the staff know that they work with all of the children. So that if a child is your key person and actually they prefer to work with another member of staff, that there's opportunity for that, because you get different relationships with different children.
Yeah.
Gravitate to who they like to play with and where they like to play. And that's obvious as well, that sometimes you'll get different responses from different children when you're a different adult.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with an exciting announcement. The Voice of Early Childhood Conference is back again, and it will be held on 8th of February 2025. I'm really excited to share with you all the fantastic speakers and their talks. So first up, we have Matt Baller presenting the morning keynote on proactively supporting children's mental health. Then we have 3 workshops for you to choose from out of a choice of 9 different topics and a variety of speakers. So on the leadership strand, we have Yinka Ognusi, cultivating a critical approach, targeting social justice and anti-racism. We also have Claudio Cicera and Stuart Cloak, recruiting a diverse workforce and investing in staff retention. And we have Wendy Ratcliffe, what to expect on your inspection day. And then we have our practice and parents strand. We have Dr. Sue Allingham speaking on a neuroscientific lens on the learning environment. We also have Stephanie Warrender, early literacy through song drawing. And we have Olivia Corbin-Phillip, using stories to build confidence and improve RSC. We then have our final strand, which is practice focused. From Charmaine Leach, we've got Inclusive Beginnings, Nurturing Every Child with SEND. We have Jan Dubiel, Creating Your Own Curriculum. And we have Dr. Mona Saka, Kayla Halls, and Dr. Sarah Benetti on big questions in the baby room. And then last but not least, we have Ben Kingston Hughes presenting our closing keynote all around the essential neuroscience of humour and laughter. So it's a packed agenda with lots of talks to choose from. So make sure that you grab your tickets. The link with full conference info is in this episode description. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. So I know that, again, in your presentation, and for those who are watching and listening, Jill's presentation is on the Voice of Early Childhood website, so you can have a look at that. But yeah, I keep referring to it. But you discussed the learning behaviours that you worked on with Jan Dubiel, and then you kind of looked at those a little bit more in depth and recognised the gap and that kind of strand that you really wanted to work on in terms of your curriculum. So did you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, as part of the project, one of the things I really wanted to work on was developing the staff's ability to articulate about the characteristics of effective learning. And as the project went on, and Jan talked more about learning behaviours, I came back to school and we've been working very much on trying to improve the practice and to develop the staff's understanding around supporting children to develop their awareness of their emotions and how they were managing with the challenges in school. And like we've just mentioned, the fact that COVID's still impacting on the children that we're receiving into school, and it's still impacting on their families as well. And how the family dynamic has really changed. And we've got lots of our parents are working parents, working grandparents. So it's difficult for the children to have consistency in their childcare as well. So we've got children who see lots of different adults, have lots of different boundaries, and are really finding it challenging to be able to cope with their emotions. And then we have some children who also were coming in with difficult social skills, difficulty in socializing because they've spent a lot of time on technology and are wanting that constant stimulation and find it difficult to slow down and actually play with the resources that we've got and know how to play with them because they're not constantly giving them feedback like technology would. So when I came back and we talked about all of these different things that were impacting in school, we decided that we would focus most on the strand of regulation and self-regulation. And that's the part of the project that we have been working on and are still continuing to work on with the children that we've got. And we've developed our own kind of policy, I suppose, and way of working with the children, where we're very much teaching children to be able to recognize what an emotion feels like and how to respond and react to that emotion, and modeling that for them so that even right from the beginning, when they start as a 2-year-old, we're talking to them about how they feel and associating that with certain colors to help them in visuals, and then progressing on to introducing feelings and then more mindfulness techniques to help children to then understand how to manage their own feelings and how to bring themselves back down to a kind of a calmness that they mightn't always feel when they become heightened about different emotions. That's really what we've been working on as part of the self-regulation strand.
So it's all very kind of actionable, active and tangible, like you say, really then linking those feelings with, like you said, colours, visuals, and so the resources in the setting as well, and really supporting children to then understand, feel those emotions, and also, I guess, start to express themselves as well through the resources.
Yeah, so we had lots of children coming to nursery who were very dysregulated, and we had staff then who were finding it difficult to know where to start with helping them with those emotions. And we had an out-of-date behaviour policy that didn't really support them in supporting the children. And as the children have become developmentally coming in maybe at a lower level, they weren't really appropriate strategies for the developmental age of the children that we have, and the length of time that children are attending for as well, that they are feeling different emotions. They're here for long days and they're tired, and that has an impact as well on how they're feeling. So the staff needed a clear guidance, and they needed a bit of I guess, something to lean on to know what to do so that it was consistent across the school as well. So we wrote a policy, and we were quite specific in it about language and how that would develop across the child's journey in school. And we've split it into different stages so that even if a child is older, they can still be in a different stage appropriate to where their development is. And we've talked then about introducing colours that match this, because we've worked with our local schools to work out what systems they're working, and that matches up with the systems that happen then when they go on to primary school. And we've kind of tried to tailor that back to fit with nursery. So we've got colours that link with different emotions, and we focused in on just 4 different emotions that we felt were the most prevalent that we were seeing and that were the easiest for the children to identify with and understand. And then as well as the visuals, we have got some textures that we've introduced as well. Although the children haven't really needed that, we felt the younger children might need textures more, and the colour linking to the textures. But actually they've picked up on it better than we thought they would, and are more able to manage with it.
As in, like, they picked up quite well on the colours?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And we have them on display in the nursery, and they'll go and they'll take the pictures down and they'll bring them to the staff. And likewise, all the staff carry a little card on their lanyard that shows the different emotions. And on the back of it, they've got the language that we've decided would link with that to help them then. So there's a consistent approach across the nursery so that everybody's using the same language to identify emotions. And then the staff can talk to the children about that wherever they are and whatever stage they're at. And if they move between different rooms, so if they're working with older children, then move to young children, we use the same consistent approach right across. And as well as the emotions, the colours and the textures, then we've got mindfulness techniques that we're introducing as we think the children are understanding more about expressing their emotions and what they feel like. Then we start to teach them about strategies that they can implement to help them then to regulate themselves. And we model this quite slowly within their small groups with their own little group with their teacher. And as time develops, then we introduce that into the environment. So there's an area within the environment, both inside and outside, where the children can go to practice those techniques. And we started off with ones that were quite, I suppose, multi-sensory.
Yeah.
So we have a breathing ball that expands and contracts to help children to understand about that intake of breath and then the exhale. And we also have pinwheels that the children can blow, that spin round, that help them as well with understanding about taking a breath, because unless you've been taught that, you don't really understand what that is, and seeing it visually has really helped as well. So then those things are transferred into the actual provision for children to go to and access. And we're at the point now where the staff are modeling how they might use that. So if they notice a child having a very difficult period of time and they talk to them using the visuals, the pictures and the language that we've discussed, then they might suggest, actually, shall we go together to use the resources and have some time together to help us to feel a bit more relaxed and calm in nursery. And then we're hoping that as we use that more with the children, they'll start to pick up and understand when to go, when they feel that need themselves, so that you're not having to identify it all the time.
I think it was quite impressive how quickly the children picked up on those colours and what they meant. It was within a very short space of using them. You were hearing the children using that language already and picking up on it. So as soon as they were coming into nursery, they were maybe noticing that the emotions were displayed in the room, and they were saying, oh, today I'm feeling green, or I'm a bit red today because, I've had a bit of a tough time at home before I've come to nursery. So I think all of the staff were really surprised how quickly that happened. So it's been really beneficial.
It has also helped staff also to address their emotions and to be able to talk to other staff about when, even at the end of the day, if it's been a hard day, I'm feeling a little bit blue right now, or a little bit red.
You're looking a bit yellow. Do you need a biscuit?
We're laughing about it, but it actually has opened that door to that discussion across the staff team as well as with the children, that we all are more aware of our own feelings and emotions. And it has led into more staff training and more time on well-being and making sure that the staff are regulated so that they're then able to co-regulate with the children. So we've had some CPD for the staff about their own wellness, and they've all created a wellness plan. And we've talked through that with them, and we're hoping to continue that on and to have a focus on well-being at all of our planned CPD, so that part of the training would also include time for the staff to understand that they're important and that they're valued. And it's been a massive impact, just actually standing back and talking about emotions.
It's really important to have that for the team as well. Like you say, it's so interesting that's what's come about from it. And I guess the colours both for the children in a different way, but I'll just say about the staff, it's like having that medium and almost like a softer language to bridge that discomfort of talking about emotions, which is something that you may not necessarily address. And you wouldn't just sit down and say, I've had a really hard day. You just kind of get on with it. But actually, like you said, maybe almost like making it into, not really, it's not a joke or anything like that to kind of laugh at in terms of your emotions, but actually it's just making sure that it's a topic that is more approachable and more comfortable, rather than like, this is really serious, I'm going to talk about how difficult I'm finding everything. Actually ensuring that the team recognize that this is something that is just normal to talk about every day, at whatever point, to just, have those conversations with each other, and you can open those conversations at any time.
And I think the fact that we've talked now about a wellness plan, it links very much with the staff being aware that their well-being is very important, and that we do feel like it's very important, and that we want them to talk about their emotions, but we also want them to be in control of that and have a plan, and to think about how to make themselves feel better if they're feeling like they're not feeling totally regulated. How can you help yourself? Because we're teaching the children to be able to go and help themselves when they feel dysregulated. But actually, that's equally important for us as adults to feel that we've got somewhere to do that as well, and to be able to talk to each other. And that a lot of the time, that's really what everybody says that it makes them feel better, is actually having a listening ear and having other people who are there that they can talk to. And that's a hard thing to fit in. That's something that's really quite easy and an easy fix. And if that's what helps people, it's really important that we get to that point for the staff as well as the children.
And I was going to go back to the children as well. What are the 4 emotions that you said you identified as like the main emotions to focus on initially?
So we have happy, and we have sad, and we have angry, and then we have excited / worried, because they kind of feel the same.
Okay.
4 different colours. Different
That's
emotions.
interesting. So those are kind of the main emotions that you felt that children could identify with, and kind of not to overcomplicate things too much and to bring in too many feelings and emotions, that because the feelings are such kind of loaded, I guess, concepts in themselves anyway, because they're not very tangible, but everything that you're doing is making them tangible. And through those mindfulness strategies as well that you talk about, and the resources, you're really supporting children to, I guess, visualize, and through the colors, visualize those emotions or feelings and take them out of their heads, which is exactly what we always are kind of encouraged to do as adults, in terms of, if we read or hear anything around mindfulness and well-being and mental health, it's always about kind of getting out of your head and being able to visualize the emotions, or using kind of stress boards and things like that. So I guess it's really setting children up for that very early on. Reminds me of a podcast episode with Matt Baller, who talks about proactive mental health. So, supporting mental health proactively rather than like when it's too late. So it really kind of reminds me of, this is kind of the work that you're doing now to support children with their mental health, well-being, their self-regulation, before it then needs to be more of an intervention kind of technique.
Yeah, and what we're trying to link this very much with our policy around behaviour. So trying to really discuss with the staff that behaviour is a form of communication, and that we need to support the children because they're communicating something that isn't quite right to us. But actually, it's about our co-regulation of what they're communicating. That really is how we want to support children with behaviour. So it all kind of links together, that if we get that commentary right for those children, and we're able to model to them, to show them that how they can regulate themselves, and we are the voice for them, we're giving them really good grounding in those skills to be able to then in the future manage themselves completely independently.
Yeah. And I think without those like those social and emotional skills, then they can't access the rest of the curriculum. So it's really important that we get that right first before we try to focus on the rest.
And I can really see why you really focused on this strand, obviously because of your own reasons, of your cohort of children that you really kind of recognize that with. But generally, it is the foundation, children's self-regulation should be that foundation, like you say, Rebecca, in terms of, then accessing the rest of the curriculum and their learning. And is this something that you also work with parents, families with, in terms of like introducing this to them and sharing it with them?
Yeah, well, we've started to, particularly for families who were maybe having very difficult times with children outside of school, who were coming to us and asking for advice. when we'd started to implement this, we were sharing that with them and about, well, we're doing this and we'll give you the same resources to take home and you can try it at home. But now I think we've moved on to the point where really we want to share this with the families and the community so that we're all doing the same things as well, so that there's continuity between when children go between different places as well, so that the children can, we've had lots of feedback from parents about them going home and saying that they're blue and why they keep telling me that they're blue. And when we explain them what that means, they're completely on board and want to help with it. So I think that's really one of the developments we want into the future, is to have some workshops with parents and grandparents to share this with them, and to make sure that all of the children go home with the same cards that we use in school around their emotions that might help them and to manage at home.
Yeah, and so the parents can support them with the techniques we're using in school as well. We've got families who might come back and say, well, my child was really upset on Sunday and they were asking for a teacher from nursery to support them with the breathing. What do they mean by that? I need they're saying that they need help with the breath. What do they mean by that? So if we can help the parents with that, then right direction.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that continuity, that consistent approach in terms of using the same language across the setting, and also working with primary schools in terms of, how they support self-regulation. So it's so great to hear that everything is consistent and you are really kind of reaching out and working in partnership, because that is so important. So with the school, is it in terms of the colours, because this is something that is almost, I guess, in a way controversial in terms of associating colours with emotions, especially negative emotions and things like that. But I know that is useful for children. So in terms of kind of how you decided on the colours, did children already have some kind of association with a color and an emotion, and then it's easier for them to kind of then communicate that, because like we said earlier, feelings are so loaded. Like if they say they are sad, they may not necessarily know exactly what that feels like, or they may have heard that word, but how does the color help them? Is it because some people might think it's just replacing the word, because they could say the word blue instead of sad, and then that could be because we know the word blue is kind of sad, known for sad anyway. So are we just replacing the word and it's the same thing anyway?
So the colour came from the work that the primary school were doing, and we wanted to be able to support the transition through to the primary school. I understand what you're meaning about the replacement. Is it just a replacement of a colour for an emotion? I think when we've looked at the ability of the children, we felt like the very youngest children, we've got the 2-year-old children, wouldn't understand and wouldn't replicate the language of emotions, but may use the colours. And we have visuals that have quite clear, like emoji type visuals that are in those colours.
That makes
very clear that it's not a photograph of anybody in particular. It's quite clear that that's what that emotion is. That's why we really went down that route. And then we knew that we needed to introduce that language, but it needed to be very simple to start with. And then it had to be progressively more language increased, like a wider range of language used, the right way. Rather than just sticking to one word. So if we could increase the range of how they felt when they felt that emotion, that's sort of what the progression is. But going back to the youngest children, we just wanted them to recognize that there was something that was different in the way that they felt. And it wasn't necessarily anything to do with a color or a label of a word or anything. It was just to recognize actually something's happened here, and to go and go to an adult for that, and for them to respond to them. And that's the very early stage that we've written in a policy. That's all we want from stage 1, is to recognize something's happened and to let an adult come and respond to them around that. So it really is starting to, at the very early stage, and progressing on. We also have a lot of children who've got additional needs, and we wanted something that they were able to use as well. And we use cards already. We use a lot of different children have PECS cards. We have communication and print cards that we use for visual timetables. There's a lot of exchanging of cards for different reasons as well that children might use as a communication method. And we felt like this system would give them access to be able to respond to adults as well, and to be able to show them how they're feeling. And we've had some huge success with those children in particular who we felt the system isn't as accessible to, and they are often the children who become the most dysregulated. And for them to be able to come and identify, there's something happening to me and I don't feel right, and then to show that to an adult, for an adult to be able to respond to them, is absolutely huge. And we've had children who have done that, and it's been just the most magnificent thing that you've seen, that we didn't even feel like they understood, and they've just blown our minds by going in and showing us the visual of how they're feeling, or responding when they've seen somebody else do something, by showing an adult how that child's feeling. We've had huge success beyond what we felt we would ever achieve. So it has been quite instrumental in the changes that we've put into place.
And I guess to kind of start summing up this episode, really your aim, and this is probably one of your aims for when children leave your setting, is you want children to be able to talk about their feelings. But like you just said, there's been so much more, so many bigger things that have come out of this as well, in terms of even, when you mentioned earlier, your team's well-being, and really focusing on supporting children with special educational needs as well. So this has been such a, like you said, a huge success, but in so many different ways, and not just kind of the kind of what you set out at the beginning and just curriculum focused. It ended up being entirely holistic for everyone involved.
It definitely has. It's started off small, and it's definitely growing. And it really links in with a lot of the policies that we've got, and impacts on the practice, and like you mentioned, on the staff well-being. And I know that lots of the staff who are here have young children and also use it at home. So I can see that when we share with families, that they'll also probably, it'll be beneficial to their children beyond the nursery children as well. And also for grandparents, because we have a lot of grandparents who come and support the children as well, and to just have that consistency as well for them, and that support for them.
Well, thank you both very, very much for sharing your work on this project. And it's really great to hear that there was something that was so kind of specific to your setting and the needs of your community. And it wasn't just the kind of the curriculum you were looking at and that's it. And it was more of a kind of paper-based, almost like exercise or a tick list. It was really clear from what you were saying that you were really homing into the specific needs of the children, the families, and your team as well. So it's great to hear how much success has come out of it. Yeah. So for all those who are listening or watching, you can find out more about this project by visiting the dedicated project page on the Voice of Early Childhood website. The link is in this episode description. And you'll also be able to find there on the page more podcast episodes, articles, reflections, and presentations from educators as well who've taken part in the project. So do check this out. Thank you very much once again, Jill and Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.